Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show where I'm going to be reviewing a movie and not an album, Billie Eilish's The World is a Little Blurry. I'm going to be reviewing this because, frankly, along with Kanye and Taylor Swift, she is the most important musician and the most important artist out there right now, and I think to ignore anything that she does is you sort of run the risk of missing out on what's really happening in popular culture. You may also notice that my hair is not as made as it usually is. This is actually it's entirely in honor of Phineas O'Connell, Billie Eilish's brother, and very much in the spirit of his beautiful doinkage. That's what we call this in our household. We call it doinkage when you wake up with a bedhead. And I woke up lucky this morning. I think it really works. Now, I knew what I was going to... See, this is the thing. The real question about any movie like this, any documentary about a living person that is made with the help of the person, is it going to be any good at all? Is it going to be just a sort of piece of mid-level propaganda? Is it going to be like your standard pop star documentary, and I'm so tired but I love my fans for 2 hours, right? Or is it going to reach to something deeper? Is it going to get to a better point? Is it going to be a good movie? So that's the real question. Is Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, a good Billie Eilish movie, or is it a good movie? The answer is, it's a good movie. But I didn't know that at first. You see, by happenstance, I happened to watch this movie in 2 sittings. This was not intentional. We've been looking forward to this movie for weeks. By we, I mean especially my daughter, okay? Who sometimes... Goat will appear on this channel talking about Billie Eilish songs in particular, but she is such a fangirl of Billie Eilish that I wasn't sure if she could really contribute something, because this movie is so much made for the fangirls and the fanboys who just love everything that Billie does and get super into the little details and the names of her dogs and the names of her friends, and her friends have a Reddit and her dog has a Reddit and her dog's best friend at the dog park has a Reddit, all that kind of like super detail. Intentionally, I'm leaving her out of this. But the reason that I saw this movie in 2 different settings is because of her. She happened to have a lot of math homework this weekend, okay? Like, a lot. Like, what's going on? The amount of math homework. And it's hard. It's hard. You know, we're doing remote learning, so she's not going into school. So for now, she's basically homeschooled. And she's doing all this work, and she just didn't have enough time on Friday to watch a 2.5-hour movie. So we just said, we'll watch half of it, we'll watch an hour, and then we'll stop, and then we'll watch the next half. Little did I know that there is an intermission, and on the second day, when we hit play, we hit play, and then it just immediately went to the intermission. And this is a very odd thing. A 2.5-hour movie shouldn't need an intermission, but as we'll see, what makes this a great movie is that intermission, is the slight, and perhaps even to many people imperceptible change in between the 2 sides. This change is what led to the title of this video. The Billie Eilish movie is very sad, ... until it's not. Watching this first half on Friday. Now, I downloaded... You can only watch this movie on Apple Plus, so I'm using my free trial of Apple Plus. I will be canceling it. Probably I'm gonna let my daughter watch the movie for the rest of the week a couple more times, and then I'm going to cancel the subscription. But so I did this on Friday, and Friday I watched the first half, and I was like sad, like for most of the day, like for most of the next day of Saturday, I was like, wow, because this is the thing, like celebrities is difficult, right? Like I feel empathy for celebrities. I don't think because they're rich and famous that they don't deserve empathy. But child stars are on a whole nother level, right? Like it's really hard when you see young people, especially as a father, or especially as somebody who works with young people, as I do as a professor, you just feel this just overwhelming just sadness. Like, I don't laugh at Britney Spears. I don't laugh at Justin Bieber. There's nothing funny about it, because the things that keep human beings happy are these human connections, the human connections to other people. And fame and wealth hurt those connections. They make you doubt the veracity of your own connections. They get you filled with people who are hangers-on, who are leeches, who can direct you away from your better instincts towards more isolating and negative instincts. And so I've always known this about Billie Eilish. You know, I reviewed her first album the week it came out. I actually introduced it to my daughter, but shh, we don't tell that anymore. You can't have your dad introduce you to your favorite artist. But my feeling always was that the family was the hope. The family was the strength. How could she possibly make it through? It would have to be with this family. So in the first half of this movie, her family apparently fails her. If you watch this movie and you haven't seen any other footage with her family, like I have, you know, I've watched the interviews and all that, you know, because I watched a lot of Billie Eilish content with my daughter, you get the sense that, like, the parents, who in other places appear to really be there, the whole first half of the movie, they're just hanging around, saying this, saying that. They don't feel that different than, you know, than Britney's parents or Bieber's parents. Like, they really don't. Like, the only way you can make it through as a child star is to have a really good family around you that's stronger than these negative pulls. And this whole first half of the movie, I'm like, she doesn't have it. I'm like, oh no. I've been supporting this artist when really I shouldn't be, because she needs to get better help and she needs to be out of the limelight. Always at the back of my head, and this popped up a lot in the first half, is why were they homeschooled? You know? I mean, my children are basically homeschooled now because of COVID, but they're going back to school, you know, as soon as the pandemic is over. But, you know, people get homeschooled for a reason. What is the reason? It's not always a bad reason, but it's usually a reason which gives deeper context into one's home life. Like, is it like some very off-ball, you know, like offbeat religious belief? What are those beliefs? Is it some kind of conspiratorial belief about society? Like, I know it's not my business, right? It's not my business. But then so much of what makes Billie Eilish so interesting in public, and so much of her public-facing personality is all tied up with her family. So, like, what is the reason? And when I watched this first half, I started to wonder, like, is there something kind of dark happening here? And then, oh my God, the movie, the first half is terrifying. So the parasocial relationship, you know, like even if you've never watched one of my videos before, you're forming a parasocial relationship with me, right? You know I have a daughter, you know I'm a teacher, you know I care about my kids because I care about my daughter's interests, you know I'm probably a little bit arrogant because I think I know more than I do and just the way that I talk, and you know a fair amount about me, right? You know how awesome my doinkage is? Oh yeah, right? Like, you know that about me, and I don't know anything about you. But given the nature of especially this kind of format or confessional music, you feel like you know the person. And the thing is that if you have psychological problems, these parasocial relationships can be dangerous. They can hurt you. They can blur the line between reality and fantasy in a way that leads to things like, you know, borderline personality disorder and other very destructive psychological problems. And right off the bat, she says in a concert in this video about one of her fans gets hurt, and she says, "You need to be okay because you're the reason that I'm okay." And, you know, I'm just like, oh no, that can't be true. No, the reason you're okay is because you're okay. The fans don't make you okay. And later she says, they aren't my fans, they are a part of me. To the point where when I put my daughter to bed on Friday, after she stopped saying, please, can we watch the second half? I had to explain to her, you know, you don't know her. You don't know her at all. You don't know her at all. You don't know anything about her, nothing really, nothing at all. No more than I know Mozart. You do not know her. And you know, my daughter's young, so she sort of gets it and sort of doesn't. But to see this person who's becoming the object of parasocial relationships, believe in parasocial relationships, and believe that they're good, goes even further when she talks about her relationship with Justin Bieber and her obsession with Justin Bieber and like her love of Justin Bieber. And so we had this weird thing where somebody is becoming something unhealthy that she used to look up to. Like, she had an unhealthy parasocial relationship, and then she became the object of a unhealthy parasocial relationship. It's very odd. And it's very sad. This whole first half, if you believe like I do, that these are signs of a hurt person, not like a, oh, kind of sad, gothy, whatever. No, like a really hurt person. This whole first half is just so sad. And then there's the relationship with her boyfriend. Now her boyfriend, Q, I think they're trying to make him sort of a villain. Like he just doesn't answer the phone and he doesn't really show up and he's oddly absent. But also, she's pretty controlling and very clearly not reading the signs from him. And really, it's very clearly an unhealthy relationship. That it comes from an unhealthy place in her. She has this neediness, which is not like, no, sometimes you're just crazy for somebody who's not crazy for you. Like a really sad neediness. Like she needs him to fill some kind of void, some kind of emotional need that she's not getting met other places. Meanwhile, he's also an adult man, right? He's in his 20s and she's not even 18. And so, like, even this is really sad. And it's not sad because her boyfriend treats her poorly. It would be just as sad if her boyfriend didn't treat her poorly and she got what she wanted from him. In a way, his coldness is a kindness because it's forcing her to come to terms with herself and love herself as opposed to having this sort of adoring relationship and this reciprocal sort of neediness. That's what leads to codependence. So all these things are going on. And then in the middle of all this, we also have all these interviews with her where we have a whole room filled with adults talking to her and taking every single word she says completely seriously, like it's the most important thing in the world. Now, I don't think it's good for anybody to be taken totally seriously all the time. Okay, I just don't. I don't think, it doesn't matter how famous you are, how smart or mature you are, you always need somebody to just kind of sit there and make fun of you, right? Like, or kind of laugh at you. But especially if you're like 16, 17 years old and you're kind of pontificating about the nature of life and some 47-year-old reporter is writing it down and taking it seriously because that's their job. I just feel like, are we not watching this person break apart? Especially when throughout the entire first half, the parents are barely there. We then have this physical toll on her body. According to my daughter, she used to be a dancer and she really hurt herself and she has a hard time moving around. But it's really sad. It's not just sad, she has a bout of Tourette'S, which I didn't know she had Tourette's. One of my best friends growing up had Tourette's as well. It's a real thing. It's a very sad thing. It's a very difficult thing to to live with because people don't understand it and they think you're joking, right? They don't take you seriously. But that's not the sad part. The sad part is like when she hurts her ankle at some point in Europe on a trip, and it's very clear that that's just her crying out for a break. Like she's on this tour, she has to do all these meetings and she has to do all these appearances and has to do all these concerts, and even though she loves it and this is the life that she wants, she's like a kid. She's just like, my ankle hurts, Like, I'm not saying it's fully psychosomatic, I'm sure she's in pain, but it's very clearly a sign of like, please let me stop, The dancing monkey is tired and you need to let the dancing monkey rest, and the parents are there just saying like, keep dancing, monkey. I'm telling you, it's that sad. That's how sad the first half of this movie is. And then you think, okay, what about the brother? This has to be it, right? This has to be it because, as I always say, Billie Eilish is not one person. Billie Eilish is two people, right? Billie Eilish is Billy and Phineas. That is the artistic creation. To separate them is to not understand what the band is, okay? So, unfortunately, in the first half of this movie, he doesn't come across that much as a loving, supportive brother. He comes across more as almost like a parent. Now, he's 5 years older. My brother's 6 years older than me. At times, he was my parent. My other brothers were 12 years older than me, and they were often my parent. But it's really at times kind of unsettling because they show how he knows how to manipulate her to do what they need to do. Like he has to shoulder all this adult responsibility of dealing with A&R from the record company, and they say they need to write a hit, and he needs to not tell her about what the hit is, and the fear that you get is that there might be some kind of Pygmalion thing going on here, that she's some creation of his, and that this is his way to get fame, and his way to get celebrity is sort of using her and exploiting her I don't know really how to describe what makes her such a celebrity, whatever it is, right? Because there's not like one thing that makes her such an intriguing star. There's multiple things, but she's just a star, and that's just so clear. And so in this first half, I mean, you see them working together, and it's nice, but it didn't feel like the support was actually there. It made me think, we've actually been, my family, when we're not watching that, I got this on DVD, because it's not available streaming, the Beatles anthology. I'm trying to get, I've kind of held off on the Beatles with my kids, because like the Beatles are so good that you just end up thinking they're the only good band if you're too exposed to them too early. So we've been watching this, and we're just getting through the early stages, and it's so clear that the sort of Hard Day's Night phase of the Beatles, the Beatlemania phase, that like the only way they made it through, because they're not that much older than Billie Eilish at this point, is that there was 4 of them, and they were teasing each other, and they wouldn't, people would take them seriously, but they would make fun of each other. And they didn't have their family, but they had each other, and they were always in the hotel rooms together during all these tours, and they're always there, and they're always partners, and they were sharing this weight of fame equally. I don't know. This is just my prediction. If Billie Eilish was instead called Billie and Phineas, I think everything would be much better. They would not be as famous, okay? They wouldn't be as big of a band, but I think they'd probably be happier, because I think that, obviously Phineas does at least 70% of the songwriting, okay? Billie Eilish says she doesn't like writing songs, and you have to read their credits. That's already important in the first place, but maybe he could just be up there, and there could just be 2 of them, and they could shoulder that together. And of course, Billie Eilish would still be 1,000 times more popular, because Phineas isn't particularly charismatic or whatever. But still, I don't know. So this whole beginning half leaves me sad. It's not entirely sad. There's some awesome parts in this first half that made me laugh, made me happy, especially the happy moments with Phineas, like where they're recording in a hotel room. You get to see them. There's a part on the album where they talk about taking out their Invisalign, and it's just great. It's sort of like the apex of this is the arrival moment of bedroom pop music, right? Because they are literally making all the music in Phineas's bedroom, and they continue to make it in the bedroom or in a hotel room, and it's just astounding watching them actually, like you see them actually make Bad Guy on video. It is so cool, because it's one of the most important songs of this decade, the last 10 years, and you get to see them actually make it together. Those parts in this first half are just ridiculously fun, and it really reinforces my first video that I did about them. I called the album Dorky Sibling Pop, and that's really what it is. Like, the heart of this band isn't actually Billie Eilish and her sadness and her life and going through and all the things which I think a lot of people misread. I think the heart of the band is this interplay between these siblings that do love each other and care for each other and have this kind of shared perspective in the world. I don't know. So that part I loved, That helped to balance out some of the other bad parts, like Orlando Bloom just appears at Coachella and is just a total creep and weirdo, and this whole thing with this idea of fame. And then we get to like this low point, which is Coachella, where she has a bad show, but then it turns up like being, wait, before I get there, I want to say two more things I really liked from the first half. Phineas rolls his eyes at one point when Billie talks about how she wants in a video to have black blood coming out of her eyeballs. And that to me, I wish they'd play that up, because that's like Paul making fun of John in a press conference, like that's really funny, because, it's like, oh, black blood coming out of it, and like that's how I feel, like it's cool, you should do that, it's good, the video, but kind of laughing at it. And then there's a photo shoot where Billie Eilish lets a spider come out of her mouth, and my daughter actually has a t-shirt of that image. And she was actually asked one day to like wear something to cover it up at school, because it's considered too shocking. And that just makes me happy, because, there's still musicians out there who can shock people, who can get people to, ooh, that's not okay. Okay, so we get to the Coachella point. This is the real low point, right? This is the real low point. But somehow, the reason this movie is great is it anchors the second half saves you. The second half eliminates all this sense of sadness to the point where at the end of the movie I was completely happy and I felt totally fine about Billie Eilish's well-being. I no longer had that weird sort of parasocial parental relationship with her, right? And the reason why is because of three people: Mom, Dad, and Justin Bieber. She actually meets Justin Bieber. She's incapable of like processing it at all, right? But this ends up being the turning point in the movie. Because like right before this, she's like catatonic in the dressing room and she has oxygen. And the dad is like, you know, oh, you forgot some words. And the mom's like, oh, you were amazing. And it's like, she wasn't. She wasn't. It was a bad show as far as I could tell. And it's this sort of like real emotional low point. And then we have the meeting with Justin Bieber, which is just charming because she's meeting her idol and she just like says, get away from like, and he's just sitting there. He's just sitting there waiting for her to come to him. And it's like he's lived this reality for 10 years, he has, of people meeting him and losing their mind, incapable of meeting him. And so it's this beautiful moment where he respects her as an artist and probably recognizes that it is good for his career if they're friends, right? That weird sort of symbiotic relationship that celebrities have with each other. But it's this beautiful moment because they hug, and then afterwards the movie lightens up. And they have this whole discussion, and Justin Bieber sends her all these texts. Justin Bieber is my favorite character in this movie, by the way. I walked out of this movie just loving Justin Bieber because he like writes these texts, you know, believe that you are great, but not greater than anybody else. And Phineas, to his credit, says that's the guy you should be friends with. You should be friends with Justin Bieber because he knows what you're going through. You know, Katy Perry comes through and says, oh, I know what you're going through. No, you don't, Katy Perry. You don't know this. Like, not this level of this. Like, you were big, but you weren't this. This really is the same level of people losing their mind, having this feeling, and only like whatever, 10 people in the history of existence have ever had this level of fame at this age. And these are the two people who know it. But it's also funny because it actually reminds me of the part in the Beatles' career where they meet Elvis, you know? And it's like, Beatles meeting Elvis is great, but and the Beatles looked up to Elvis, and he was their idol, you know? But the Beatles are so much better than Elvis. And Billie Eilish is such a better artist, and a better celebrity, and a better pop star than Justin Bieber that it's very funny. It's very funny to see because you're like, this is a real upgrade for Justin Bieber. And after this point, we had this beautiful section where the mom is talking in the kitchen. And it's like, finally, Mom, you showed up. And she's talking about this relationship, about how she was lovesick with Bieber. I'm like, okay. But then she almost comes to tears talking about how bad Justin Bieber's life was. How much Justin Bieber needed people who weren't on the payroll to care for him and be there with him. We see her feeling this pain and this responsibility that she has for Billie Eilish, for her daughter, to keep her safe, emotionally safe, you know? And it's great. You're like, oh good, she does get it. She's not just another pop star parent. She understands the weight of this. Now, whether or not she succeeds, who knows? I'm not certain that it's possible to make it out of being this famous this young. I think it might be possible that it's impossible to make it out, right? Maybe Billie Eilish will be the first, but I don't know. But it was just so nice to see her say what she means. And then intentionally, great filmmaking here, right after that, the dad is telling her Billie Eilish is about to drive for the first time. And he's giving her this lesson about how to be sensible and take it easy. And if you need to stay calm, you just stay calm. And if you take the wrong exit, don't freak out. And he's going through all these things. And it's on the nose, you know, it's a super on the nose moment of what it's like to be a parent and send off your kids. And he goes on to he tries to comfort himself with this long explanation of how it's amazing that we're alive at all. The perils of existing. And he's like sending her off to her boyfriend's house, and he knows the boyfriend isn't that great, and she got the car of her dreams, and it's a Dodge Charger. And matte black? Who wants a car that's matte black? Okay. And you know, like sends her off, and it's a beautiful, like right on the nose moment of parenting where he's worried about her emotional but also physical safety. But you can tell that he's just telling the camera, I have prepared her as much as I can. She must now go out into the world as an individual. Hopefully she will be okay. It is out of my hands, which is all you can say as a parent, right? At a certain point, that's all you can do. So it's just great. After this, she breaks up with the boyfriend. She still doesn't quite understand, but she gets close to understanding what was happening in the relationship by at least saying they didn't want the same thing, and so they had to break up, which is great. And then that's matched with her and Phineas singing a song about the breakup. And it's just, these two, I could watch these two playing music together just for 2 hours straight. Another thing this documentary has in common with the Beatles anthology is it lets the music breathe. There's tons of her music. And by the way, her music is amazing. It's some of the, it's just great, awesome, amazing music. And we get to see them making it here with this song, which I don't even know if it's released, about the breakup. And you see the connection that they have, the brother and sister, to make music together. And I will say it. And if you don't like me saying it, I don't care. It feels like Lennon and McCartney. It has that feeling, that exciting feeling of two people who need to work together to arrive at the best they can make, okay? I'm not saying they're better. I'm not saying, but I'm saying that that's the feeling that you get watching them work together, and it's really special. And it comes to this great moment. Even then, you'd think there's a really sad moment in which she has a meltdown, okay? She's just after a show and she has to meet all these random people and she's taking pictures and she's kind of yelling at her mom and she's acting like a diva. I'm gonna get back to that gendered word in a second. I am using that word intentionally. I do not believe in that word diva. She's acting like a diva and just these are the guys from Verizon, which is like the saddest point of the whole movie, because she has to sit there and these guys from Verizon are like touching her and just really not respecting her personal space, and she has to smile and smile and smile, right? And then right after that, she's in the bus and she's talking about this and she's complaining so much. She just keeps saying, I literally can't have a bad moment. Some fan on Twitter or Instagram, whatever, said, I saw Billie yesterday and she wasn't nice and she was really grumpy. And you can feel the pain in it. And in the beginning, the mom is like, well, this is just what you have to do. But she switches right at the right point and says, we failed you. We failed you, Billie. And if you're being an insensitive jerk, which I suppose a lot of people will be, they'll just sit there and just say, oh, what a diva. She just can't handle the fame. All she has to do is just shake hands with people and take a picture with them and I'll make their entire life. And she can't do that for them. They're the reason that she's there. For the first time, really, Billie Eilish is standing up and saying, you are not the reason I'm okay. Me hugging you is not why I'm okay. I am a human being. I exist. I have my boundaries. You're a human being. You exist. You have your boundaries. I can't break down my boundaries for you right now. Think about Ringo signing autographs his whole life, and in the last 10 years, he won't sign any autographs. He will just say the words peace and love. That's the only conversation he'll have with anybody. Peace and love. I have a parasocial relationship with Ringo Starr. I know Ringo. I've known him my whole life. And if I ever meet him, peace and love, and I won't even ask him, you know? But still, this division, this separation that she's able to put in is a sign of her health, is a sign that she's okay. This isn't a diva breakdown. This is a human being maturing into understanding the division between her and her fans. It's great. This movie is subtly really good. I bet it's possible to watch that scene and not really see it. Just sort of see that as like a typical sort of scene of like, whatever, you know, like these are just different moments, they're just vignettes. But the way it's constructed in these two different halves, it's, to me, very clearly a justification, an answer to the first half, right? Oh, it's great. And there's also a part where they do the soundtrack to the Bond song, No Time to Die. And Billie Eilish just says something that makes me just laugh because she's belting in the song. And she just goes, the internet's gonna laugh at me. And that's another beautiful moment. It's the same thing. It's the same thing of her realizing the difference between her and her fans. It's establishing that inside her head, she's listening to the internet and she needs to stop listening to the internet. And it goes on and you know, there's this sort of end part where she talks about how she used to cut herself. And again, that does make you wonder, you know, like what is it really? Like what is the darkness really inside of her? Because I mean, you don't do that unless it's a real trauma response, you know? So there's a lot sort of unmentioned, but we have this beautiful moment where she assesses her life and she's in her car and she seems like she's okay. And then the movie ends and you're just happy. It was a really, really well done documentary. I would say on the whole, music documentaries are not good, right? Usually the subjects are so interesting that the movie doesn't have to be good. This movie does something good, but does it very subtly. So I say get Apple Plus and watch it. But that's not what I'm doing. I don't do thumbs up, thumbs down. Everything's a thumbs up. All right, there's the camera.